Coins. Fox Valley Coins is on Route 59, just one light north of I-88 at the Naperville-Warrenville border. Family-owned integrity since 1981.
Now, from the Signature Bank Studios, this hour of the Shaun Thompson Show is sponsored exclusively by DonleyAuctions.com. They need your guns. Sell for top dollar. DonleyAuctions.com.
From the streets of Melrose Park to the trading floor of the Merc, he's fought for every dollar he's ever earned. And now, with personal liberty and our system of capitalism under assault in America, he's here to seize back our rights from the government. With a cigar in one hand and a copy of the Declaration of Independence in the other, he's Shaun Thompson. And this is the Shaun Thompson Show.
Some folks are born made to wave the flag. Ooh, they're red, white, and blue.
I don't believe a word of it.
And when the band plays, hey,
I think, therefore I am. All of the AI data centers, I think it's obsolete before it opens. What do you think about that, Squirrel? It doesn't matter what you think, but my next guest, wicked smart. But before I get to him, I want everybody to hear how in Illinois, all of these AI data centers, they're passing flying colors to the objection of citizens.
Joliet will be home to the largest data center in the state after a vote earlier today by the city council. WGN's Dana Rebick has the emotional reaction from residents. And Dana, they were mostly all against this, right?
Yes, overwhelmingly.
Doesn't matter. Fix is in. That's how you know, to me, it's a money laundering scheme. Democrat area, citizens don't want it. Too bad, you're going to get it. My next guest is the executive director of Climate Science Coalition of America, author of 4 books on energy, climate, sustainable development, and all kinds of things. He's wicked smart. His name is Steve Goreham. Steve, how are you?
Hey, Shaun. Great to join you again. I'm doing well.
This is very interesting, and I'm going to tell you why. It
Okay.
reminds me of the late 90s and all of the poppycock, the internet. It's going to be great. Buy everything. People were buying companies up, and everybody got their ass kicked because there was no money in it. And we already kind of had it. It just took many years to develop into what it would be as profitable if you think that way. But when it comes to these data centers, I'm sorry, Steve, but I'm aware of what quantum computing has the capability of doing. You could crush this data to a tenth of what we now know. These monstrous centers, the electricity, the water, and a vast majority of it is those little portable nuclear facilities that are small. They're not big like the old ones. In some cases, you could run it just for the data center. And then I remembered Pritzker when he was running for office. Do you know what one of his holdings of him and his whole family was? Those little nuclear facilities and the technology. So to me, this is one big money fraud. How do you see it?
Well, that's an interesting point of view. And some people do hold that. And you're right. There was a bubble at the end of the internet about the year 2000 when a lot of people were investing and the prices got way out of hand. And
yeah, it was the beginning of it.
The things collapsed. But so will this happen? You know, that's up in the air. There is a huge amount of money being spent. This year, the big hyperscalers, Microsoft, Meta, Alphabet, Amazon, and Oracle, have announced plans to spend over $650 billion on infrastructure, mostly data centers. That number is higher than all the nations on Earth except the top 22. It's more than what the gross domestic product of 165 nations. So this is, and by the way, this is up since about 2019. This will be up by about a factor of 10. So there's a huge amount of money going in. I don't know, could all these guys be wrong? Microsoft, Meta, Alphabet, maybe, but they seem to be spending an awful lot of money for these things.
Well,
and
it's less they have to pay taxes on, more of a write-off, less they could. And then they'll have these big, giant facilities, and who knows what good that'll be when it comes time to build the AI robots and whatnot. But one of the companies you didn't mention in there is the one I'm most interested in. And it's because the guy who runs it, as far as I can tell, is arguably somebody with the most foresight and the smartest son of a gun among all of them, and that's Musk. Yeah. Musk, who owns Tesla, which Tesla has very little to do with cars. It's really an AI robotic company. And he's at the forefront of all of it, right? You've got Tesla, and then he's got X, he's got all the rest of it, and he has a data center. And you know where it is? It's in outer space, where solar is unobstructed. In fact, he's got one, and he's sending up 2 more. And you have the potential to not use any of this nonsense or money or cost. And when you think about it, the biggest way to support it is through energy, right? And that's why Bill Gates, before the Epstein troubles, he bought 3 Mile Island, spent $1.5 trillion on it, didn't he?
Yeah, they're restarting that power plant, not the one that had the meltdown, but the other one there, 3 Mile Island.
Sure.
But Musk also has a big data center near Memphis. He built a computer called the Colossus XAI. He did that in 6 months. And it's kind of interesting. Yeah, yes. And he didn't even have the permits. He was being sued by all these people because he didn't have the permits to put these things on. But he put in 200,000 NVIDIA graphics processing units in this thing. And Tesla is both a solar company and a battery company, but he didn't use solar and batteries. He went out and got 35 on-site gas turbines, and he couldn't even get the big ones for power plants. He got these temporary ones that they send to disaster areas. And unfortunately, they make a lot of noise, and the people in Tennessee and in northern Alabama are really unhappy by the noise. But he's replacing those. So he's involved in it as well. There's more spending than the other guys I mentioned already. But it's a really, really big effort across the country and across the world.
You know what's interesting too about what we see when it comes to energy, right? Most Americans, they talk about the grid and the energy and they don't understand what it is. I mean, what it really is, if my understanding is correct, it's natural gas, it's coal, and it's nuclear. Which nuclear is interesting, right? It's a very expensive way to boil water, but it works. But there are already such advancements to the American electrical grid. We're by far the most superior country when it comes to electricity, aren't we?
Yeah, that's about those you mentioned are about 83% of our electricity. But there's big concerns it's not enough because AI, start of 2024 was 4% of U.S. electrical power demand were for data centers, and that mostly running the internet, doing cloud storage. But that's expected to be 20% by the year 2035. It's going to go radically up. And so what's going on is they're extending coal plants around the country now that were scheduled for closure. They're also restarting nuclear plants. You mentioned one of the 3 Mile Island ones. They're also they've extended Diablo Canyon in California. Palisades in Michigan's being restarted. They're restarting one in Iowa and a couple in South Carolina. And then the big winner is natural gas. There are more than 200 natural gas power plants in planning or under construction around the country right now. So this is what's going on. And by the way, people ask, can you run these with wind and solar? And you really can. An example is Larry Fink, the CEO of BlackRock. Back in 2021, he said he was going to take BlackRock's assets, more than $11 trillion, and have all those companies do green energy. But just a year ago, he said, quote, you can't rely solely on intermittent sources like wind and solar. You need dispatchable power because these data centers cannot simply turn on and off.
He's a policy whore to the 100th degree. I could get Larry Fink to say anything if somebody else is writing a check, can't you?
Well, he does respond to what his people are saying, but it's big turnaround for him. And so, yeah, we're good or bad. There's a lot of problems with AI, but we're about to enter this huge revolution.
All right, now I'm gonna take advantage of having you because I do think you are beyond wicked smart. And there's something I've always been interested in, and that is Elon Musk naming his entire company Tesla. After all, it's named after Nikola Tesla, correct?
Yep.
Okay. It's very interesting when you go back and you look at the bastardization of energy and policy between Edison, who knew how to play the game, right? Big-time government corporatist, knew how to squeeze it out. But if you look at what Tesla really believed and what his real agenda was, it isn't just the Wardenclyffe Tower project, right? He believed in something completely different than what we've been sold, and that's the ether theory, that there is electricity, there is energy in the air as it exists as atmosphere. And his whole concept was, he didn't want, there's a misconception, he wanted it for free. No, he didn't. That's why he built the tower. He wanted it as an alternative, and that maybe that theory wasn't so crazy after all. I mean, he was Nikola Tesla, but he died poor because Edison had corrupted the policy to ignore his own theory. And then here comes this guy with my favorite name of any disease. It's not my favorite disease. My favorite disease is Tourette's, especially if you can get it on a plane. But Asperger's, who just focuses on solutions. I don't think he sleeps. And if he does, he may hang upside down. But he may have named his car company Tesla, not just because he wanted electric cars and underground tunnels and satellites more than any countries and all the countries combined, but maybe he did the research and found out Nikola was onto something. Is it possible?
Well, back in those days, as I understand it, there was a big battle between Edison, who wanted direct power plants, everything to be DC, and Tesla said AC is better. And he was an engineer. He ended up going with General Electric, I think, and they won the battle. So they were producing AC power plants.
He bought the power. He said it was going to electrocute you. In fact, they first electric chairs he wanted to run on AC. He found out he was freaking wrong, right? He was wrong. It was a scam, but he had the politicians in his book, and that's why we know his name. He was a very smart guy. But you could argue that Nikola might have actually, what if he was? And here, let me put it to you this way. What if he was right? And what if that might be the plan of why the future is brighter than even we suspected? Is it possible?
Well, boy, I don't know. That's a tough question. I just know that we have this huge amount of AI going on here. Again, we have, by the way, in Illinois now there are 210 data centers as of February 2026. There are more than 4,000 in the country, up from 2,700 just 2 years ago. So the number has increased 50%. And yeah, I agree with you about local communities. I think they ought to have their own say. And if you don't want a data center next to your house, they're big things. They ought to be able to block that. But we have some of these states that are overruling a lot of the local communities.
Well, what's interesting too is the fact of the development of our country and the world, for that matter. Right, the world is only 8% developed, and America is only 6% developed. And yet they put these in all of these areas, and I can't help but notice a common denominator. I'd love to know the research on it. I believe the vast majority are in Democrat areas, which are formerly known on my show as fiefdoms. So I believe that there's a money laundering system in the government financing it. Is this the new trillions of dollars that went missing under the Biden administration for green energy, which, by the way, another beauty of Trump is that's not a problem anymore, which I love because it never was. But what happens now? Who's actually financing it? I know these businesses make commitments, but you know how those commitments are. They're like the Gates Foundation or the Rockefeller Foundation. They're just tax shills and tax havens. Who actually lays out the money, the day-to-day financing? Is it the companies or is it the government?
Well, a lot of this comes from incentives, of course. Now, Virginia has the most data centers. I guess that's a Democrat state now, 570. But Texas is number 2 with 408. So there's a lot going on in Republican areas as well. By the way, recently a letter came to Congress from 230 environmental groups saying they wanted a moratorium on data centers. They didn't want any construction. And by the way, Senator Bernie Sanders also came out for a moratorium on data centers. So it's a mixed bag. We got some Democrats that want it and some of them that want to halt it. So that's, this, and by the way, this is going to be a big election issue here because I think the left side of the Democrat Party in the midterms may come out against data centers and against AI, which would be really interesting.
I only wait for the lawyers to come out against it. I have never been able to wrap my mind around the fact that people are data raped and they receive no compensation. And these companies can not only house it for eternity, but monetize it. And the people, because they're given a disclosure that, what do you think the percentage of Americans that read those fracking things when they download an app is? And you look at the way in which it's just forfeited. All that information that they're monetizing, all that information that they're using is this excuse to change the economy, to change the culture, and to change the landscape. And you mean to tell me there's not a couple of lawyers that say, I don't like the sound of this. Why aren't we suing these guys? And, whose data is it anyway? Right?
Yeah, they're taking huge amounts of the internet and using that data. By the way, just last week, Mr. Trump came out with a national policy framework for artificial intelligence, which he's proposed to Congress. And one of those was to respect intellectual property rights and supporting creators. He also had something in there about protecting children and empowering parents. So he's trying to do this, but he's got to get Congress to pass this to have any real teeth.
So let me ask you this, from your research in it, and maybe this is something nobody's talked about or done. What would it take to house and maintain your own data? Would you need one server, like a Hillary Clinton? I could put it in the closet and say it's not there. And this way I have my own data, right? And now if someone wanted to pay me for it, well, I could sell it. You could eliminate overnight the need for these massive centers, right? After all, if people could have it, I'm sure everybody's got a little extra closet, especially the Democrats. They got houses they never need. So you could house your own data. And now you would eliminate all this, and the people themselves could decide whether they want to sell it to Google or Facebook or anybody else. You know, it's amazing how we just accept this narrative and we watch the corruption in it. And I say this because Chicago is arguably one of the first places these data centers were, and they did it in all the dilapidated buildings that were collapsing in value because of Democrat policies. And there's something I've never been able to get an answer on. What's with the water? It's a sealed system. It's not a sealed system. How often do they have to replace it? I know they use it as a coolant, but is that where the bulk of the energy goes, in cooling these data centers?
No, most of it is power, but you're right. Water is a big issue, water consumption. And it's a mixed bag. I went down to a data center in Texas. It was a small one. They didn't use any water for cooling at all. Everything was air. But as you get to a bigger data center, you got to use water to cool these racks of graphics processing units. And if you don't recycle the water, which a lot of them are now doing, then you're going to use a huge amount of water. They're also starting to use non-conducting fluids, so they aren't using any water. They're using other chemicals that are cooling the stuff. And we also have some cases where Google, for example, down east of Atlanta, actually put in a water purifying plant to recycle wastewater, so there'd be enough water for the area and for their data center. So there are solutions, but local communities need two things. They should say, hey, data center, you got to build your own power plant so our rates don't go up. And the second is we need to know your water plan. We need to know if you're going to recycle it. We need to know how much you're going to use. Otherwise, it could be very expensive for consumers.
71% of the planet, if my math remembers, if my high school remembers correctly, is water, right? 71% of the planet's water?
Pretty close, yeah, pretty high amount.
Why aren't they putting them offshore? Problem solved. Put them all offshore.
Well, I think China's trying to do that for cooling.
Go figure.
But, you know, it's expensive, and salt water is one of the corrosive things in the world here. But,
you know, it's amazing, though, how we just continue to buy the narrative of the people who continue to lie to us. These are the same people that told us we couldn't have Bitcoin mining operations and we couldn't have factories because there wasn't enough energy. Now these are the same people saying, no. Even though these use more energy than anything throughout American history, you need them, and you need a lot of them. I'm starting to really question every single narrative that comes from this. And I think it's interesting to see if, in fact, there's a reason Bill Gates paid $1.5 trillion. It's the largest purchase of anything I can remember when it comes to land. And for a facility that was turned off, this whole thing might be able to solve itself. And we might not even have to plug these into the grid. Is that possible?
Well, you know, these things are really, really big. They contact billions of files on the internet. They have all these processors, hundreds of thousands of processors. They're very, very big things. And they can do some amazing things too. Now they're mapping the human genome. They are, by the way, these AI routines one just scored 100% the other day on the U.S. medical exam for doctors. It got every question right. So these things can do kind of amazing things. So we're going to have to kind of live with them and see how they go. But hopefully we can channel them in the right direction.
First of all, Steve, I'm big on AI. I really do. I would much rather have AI bots as Congress and the Senate than I would any human being. There's no question about it. And when it comes to bureaucracies, I think you could eliminate 90% of them. There is nothing more obsolete than a bureaucrat. So I am hopeful in AI. And when it comes to both law and medicine, well, that's perfect, because I don't think an AI system needs to be bribed enough to sell me Oxycontin. So I think the future is bright. I'm just more interested in how to finance it, and I don't want to buy the narrative, because if J.B. Pritzker, if that Virginia lipless CIA governor is selling it, or Gavin Newsom, to me it's a lie. But you know where I go for the truth? I go right to you, the Executive Director of Climate Science Coalition of America, Steve Goreham. You know how much I appreciate you spending all this time researching this, and you get to pass on to those Washington bureaucrats. There's a big-mouthed, handsome devil in Chicago that's onto you. Do you mind telling them for me?
Thanks, Shaun. Hey, listeners should get my book, Green Breakdown, The Coming Renewable Energy Failure. In addition to the science and economics, it's got a bunch of great color sidebars. One of them was a story about a surgeon in Southern California he was a plastic surgeon. He was actually using the human fat from his patients to run his cars. He was converting to biofuels. He was actually prosecuted, because you're not supposed to do that. But get a copy of Green Breakdown and get all the crazy headlines along with the science and economics.
I love that. Could you then figure out what happened to that diesel guy? Do you really think he committed suicide at ocean on a cruise ship? Me either. Steve Goreham, thank you for always making time for me. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Shaun.
We'll be back with your calls and comments.
Make money, smoke cigars, and live free on the Shaun Thompson Show on AM 560. The Answer.
Twitchy.com brings you the latest in social news, highlighting and reacting to important conversations from America's most prominent journalists, politicians, and celebrities. Twitchy's kinetic group of editors deliver